Okay, in this next lesson, we are going to do a rough mix of each track. So, why we need to do a rough mix now, I guess, is we want to start going through all of our tracks with a fine-tooth comb and making sure they can sound as best, as best as they possibly can. But before we can do this, we need to make sure there's no distortion in our piece. We need to make sure things are relatively balanced, so we know how they're going to sound in terms of volume against other tracks and things like that. So, we'll probably have to come back to mixing towards the end and do like a bit of a tweak and just make sure things are nice and even. But we're going to start our rough mix now. So, first thing we need to do with our master track is make sure it's just set to 0 dB. So you might think that 0 should be the quietest something should be, so turned all the way down. But 0 is relative to our maximum sound or the output from our computer or our mixing desk, whatever you're using. 0 just basically means this is as loud as possible, but it depends on what you're listening to. And so then we go in minus from there. So this is 1 decibel less than the loudest sound, and that's why things work backwards. So if you're ever wondering why audio works backwards, that's the reason why. But anyway, we want to try to mix our tracks and make sure they're as balanced as possible. So the way I mix, I always start with the drums. So I'm just going to turn everything off except for the drums. So those tracks are all turned off. So now if I play this track here, it should just be the drums playing. And that's going to be very loud because the sound's turned all the way up, and I apologize for that. Okay, what I'm going to do is just expand all of our drum tracks. And I am going to, now this might seem a bit crazy, but bear with me. I'm going to select all of my drum tracks at once. So I'm just going to shift click on all the individual tracks and turn them all down to the very bottom. Okay, so now when I play, nothing will play. Now I'm going to use our loop marker up the top. So I'm going to drag it around a section where all of our drums are playing, maybe near where the claps start as well. And what I'm going to do is turn this loop marker on. So it's going to loop this section here where the drums are constantly playing. And it allows us just to kind of keep mixing without having to start, stop. If the playhead gets down here and there's no drums playing, it's just going to be annoying to mix. So now when I play in here, from here, our drums will just keep looping. So if I play it now, it's not going to make any sound because I've turned all the tracks down. But what we're going to do is we're going to turn start with the kick. And I'm going to just play my loop here, and I'm just going to start turning the kick up. And I'm just going to go until it is about halfway. Okay, so the reason why I'm not turning it up to full is I want to leave lots of what we call headroom. So you'll see with that fader here, everything above where the fader is getting to is what we call headroom. So if things need to get louder than that as we kind of add more tracks together, there's room for this track to actually to move and not just go into the distortion zone. So that's what we call headroom at the top of a track. Now, don't worry if it's a bit soft in our master fader. If it's too soft, we'll make the overall track louder later on in a lesson we call mastering. Okay, so right now we're just trying to mix everything together. So I've got the drums just playing, so I've got the kick just playing. I'm now going to bring in the snare in this section. So I'm going to keep the kick playing, and I'm going to slowly bring the snare in until I'm happy with its balance with the kick. So let's have a listen. All right, I can hear both those tracks quite clearly. I can hear the kick and I can hear the snare. But what you'll notice is they're not the exact same level. And that's quite common in mixing, okay? So not everything is going to be the exact same volume. So it's quite common to have different levels for different sounds. I'm going to do the same with a hi-hat now. Now I'm just going to move this loop marker to here just so it keeps playing. And all right, so let's bring in my hi-hat now. And I'm quite happy with that level there. So that's at minus 22, so 22 decibels lower than the loudest sound. So, again, not completely level. I'm just going to do this section with the crash and make sure the crash is, I'm just going to loop this section with the crash, and make sure the crash is an appropriate level. Now, I like my crashes loud, so I've turned that up quite a bit because when a drop comes in, I like it to make a big impact. But again, all of this is subjective. All this is up to you with how you feel it's you want it to, how loud you want things to be. But generally, you want things to be balanced, and you want it to be clear what's coming through. So yeah, just have a think about what you want in your mix. I'm just gonna go back to the claps now. So I'm gonna mix the claps in here. Cool, so now I've mixed my drums. I'm going to turn those off. The very next thing I'm going to mix in, I'm going to turn on my bass line, but I'm going to do the same thing where I turn the track right down and start playing. And so then I'm going to mix the bass line in with the drums. Alright, we'll leave it at that for now. It probably could come up a little bit, but we'll just see how it goes with everything else in. So now the drums are in. Next thing I'm going to do is the synth. So same thing again. I'm going to turn the overall track back on, and I'm going to expand all of our synths. And what I'm going to do is hold down Shift. So select the first chords, hold down Shift and click on the last one, and turn them all down to the very bottom. Now, our chords left and chords right are the exact same track. They're just one's in the left speaker, one's in the right speaker. So I'm going to shift click on both of them. So now when I control a fader, it controls both of them at once. And I'm going to bring them up till they're at a good level with everything else. Happy with that? I'm going to do the same for chords 2, left and right. So shift click on both of those, and then they're both selected. And you'll notice again, I had to turn those ones up louder so I could actually hear them. But that's what mixing is all about, really. All right, onto the arpeggiator. So I'm going to move my loop marker to here. So it's going to just loop the arpeggiator section, and then I can do the same thing. Shift click on both of those and mix those into where they need to be. I'm quite happy with that. And again, now I'm going to grab the pads and mix those in. Cool, so that's my synth group mixed. Now I'm going to grab my melody group. Again, expand all these tracks, and I'm going to turn them all down. So click on the first one, shift click, drag down, and drag them all down. And I'm just going to mix them in one by one so they're all nice and balanced. So start with melody, the first one. And again, I'm just going to click within my loop marker so it just loops that section. And I forgot to turn the group on, silly me. There it is. Happy with that one. Let's start the next melody. And melody 3. And that one's a quite detuned, so I don't want that as loud as the other ones, but yeah, just enough to kind of add a little bit of texture to it. So let's have a listen to this section again so far with it all mixed in. Cool, so that's my melody group mixed in. So now we've got basically everything except for the effects. We'll mix them in next. So same deal, I'm going to Now my automation's been turned off because I must have changed something within the automation channel, so I'm just going to click that orange button to turn them all back on. Turn the effects back on, which is good, and let's do the same thing where I select these tracks, turn them all down, and mix them into where they need to be. Now let's go same section because we have these building up. I might expand that out a little bit. And I've selected them all at once by accident, so I'm just going to just select the first one. What's kind of cool about this now is, well, because these tracks are a lot softer than they originally were, you can kind of make your build-ups a lot louder than everything else to make your drops seem bigger too. But we'll continue on here. I'll just mix these last two in. Okay, and lastly the drop noise, we'll mix that in. I might move this actually to somewhere quieter where I can hear this at the start of the drop perhaps. And my white noise is probably a little bit loud, so I might take that down a little bit. Even more. So you might notice what I did there. So now everything's come in, I've noticed that my melodies are probably a little bit loud. So they mix really well between the three of them, they're a bit loud. So what I can now do is grab the group and bring them all down evenly. So let's have a listen to that. So okay, now I'm going to go through and just tweak each individual group and just kind of balance everything out and make sure everything's mixed. So I'll come back in the end and yeah, we'll have a look at how it sounds. Okay, so I've gone through my piece and balanced all of the tracks in it, and I've come up with something I'm happy with. So I'm going to let you have a listen to it right now so you can compare it to how yours sounds. Okay, so the key things to think about here, I guess, are all the tracks balanced. And the other main thing is making sure that there's this master fader down the bottom right-hand corner doesn't go into the red distortion at any time throughout the track. So that's the two things you should be aiming for, okay? Balanced tracks, make sure you can hear everything within your piece at the appropriate volume, and making sure there's no distortion, that is, no red in this bottom right-hand corner in the master fader. So there you have it. That's our rough mix. Now we'll probably revisit this because once we start adding EQ, compression, the sound of each track is going to change, and the volume and just the loudness and all the thickness, the texture of each track isn't going to stay the same. So you're probably going to have to revisit this at some stage. But that's how you conduct a rough mix so we can get on with refining some of the individual sounds within our piece.